All right, since I'm not going to be here for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to load you up with some news. How's that? All right, listen to this one. This is from the New World Order. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, we've been hearing a lot about that in the last several weeks. And the like, we're supposed to bring all of us together. Instead, this article says, they're dividing our society and reshaping our minds. All of us are profoundly affected by changing technologies. Many of you reading this article have a Facebook page or a Twitter account, or may use other platforms like Instagram and Snapchat. We take computers and platforms for granted as though they always existed. How our world has transformed over the last 30 years. The internet is an encyclopedia of easily accessible information. Ask your smartphone a question, this is all something you know, and a female voice will come back with the answer in a matter of seconds. Now children can give orders to Alexa and Cortana. Alexa, vacuum my room. Cortana, turn on the light. The benefits of these new technologies, devices, and programs are obvious, but are cracks in our electronic media structure beginning to appear? For instance, some authorities say yes and are sounding alarm bells. For instance, there are privacy concerns. How much of our private lives is sold and to whom? Are Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and others eavesdropping on us? Who may be hacking into our home security systems? I've told you some of this. But the current concerns go further. What is this new world doing to us, and where are we headed? The World Wide Web, social media, and the devices that make it all possible are changing how we spend our time, how we communicate, and how we relate one to another. Take, for example, Alexa and similar digital assistant devices. Some authorities are concerned that small children can become confused over the differences between real and imaginary people. They have concerns regarding communication skills. Who's teaching, please, and thank you? Who is monitoring the tone of voice and attitude? Are we training our children to become bossy, unfriendly users of user-friendly devices? Will they relate with real people some way? And is Alexa or Cortana replacing God in their lives? Interesting angle. Consider this. Alexa, ask Meditation Studio to play a meditation. Your child may get what is described as follows. Slow breathing is yoga practice that increases oxygen levels in your brain and expels toxins, reduces stress, boosts the immune system, and strengthens the lungs and the heart. That sounds innocuous to many, but is it? Does it simply help one to relax or open one to Hindu practices and the ideas about what a meditation is? Now, I'm not going to tell you this formally, but if you have Alexa or if you have something, even on your voice, even if you have Siri, ask it who God is. When you go home, just ask it who God is and ask what they feel about God. Listen, those are programmed by people who are programmers. And so you're going to get the answers and the opinions of people who may not be Christians. And so what happens when a little child asks that? And children always ask, where's God? And so those are the things that you want Alexa teaching your children about God. And so that's what it can boil down to. I know it sounds overboard, but really it can boil down to that. Let me give you this one. So Facebook, that was in the news today because of that. And this one was in the news today. This is kind of interesting. This is after a company in Wisconsin, which I've told you about, fitted each of their employees with a microchip and claimed that they absolutely loved it. Many people were adamant that no way they would get chipped like a dog. Some people claimed religious objections, which is the mark of the beast, while others feel that their privacy has already been invaded quite enough with the advent of smart technology and advertising, and I'm ready for this, cookies. Now, how many of you know what a cookie is? I know we're not talking about the stuff that's out there on the counter. Cookies are something that most people don't understand, but when you go on an internet site, there's a cookie that usually comes up with that internet site, which is to remember who you are, what you've searched for, what you've put in your basket to buy, and any other sites you went to. Those cookies stay there, and many times go back, relate that information back to the seller of whoever is on that site, whoever owns that site. And so basically what happens is you have been tracked by these cookies. Now, a lot of times, people who are computer savvy will go in and delete the cookies, but most of us do not do that. And so that's why when you see your smartphone coming up after you've been on the internet and you're getting all these advertisements, because your cookies, it sounds weird, but your cookies have been sold. And so they've sold it to other people. So, Associate Professor of Sociology in the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee said that this is something that's going to happen, and it's going to continue to happen. So we're watching that happen, and we're watching it go on, and it's pretty invasive. And then he tells us about this. The same professor says this. He says, because of cookies and because of the things that happen in your computer, and they want to track you, the next step is everyone being digitized, everyone having a mark. And so this came out today. Associate Professor of Sociology, University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, Noel Chesley said, "It will happen to everyone eventually. Not this year, maybe not in my generation, but certainly in my kids' generations." Professor Chesley isn't alone in his prediction. Gene Munster of Loop Ventures had a lot to say about the possibility of everyone getting a microchip. He believes it's about 50 years away. I think it's less than that. Hopefully the Lord's going to come back before then. Somebody say amen. In 10 years, Facebook, Google, Apple, and Tesla will not have their employees chipped. He says you'll see some extreme forward-looking tech people adopting it. We will have their employees chipped, but not large companies right away. The idea of being chipped has too much negative connotation today, but in a few years we'll have been desensitized by the social stigma. So they're saying it's coming. Here's another one that came out today that I thought was interesting. It says, "Boys, the latest victims of the new left. The fads that determine our schools' educational approaches are often ideologically driven and do more harm than good to our children." In an article in the Providence in June of 2014 entitled "The Guys Crisis," boys are falling badly behind the girls at school. Author Paul Luke states, by high school, girls' grade point average outshines that of boys. In Canada, women make up almost 60% of the university students. He explains the phenomenon by suggesting that for too long, the needs of girls were overlooked in school, and now that things are more equitable, girls are outshining boys in learning. But is this really the case? Recently, Dr. Jim Duke, author of the former Assistant Deputy Minister of Education for the province of Alberta and former head of accounting and student assessment, performed a revealing analysis on current practice in student assessment. The results were not only remarkable, but very disturbing, exposing what might well be the institutional suppression of the performance of male students. What does that mean? His article and his research showed that, and this is kind of strange, there's a backlash going on, and now girls are favored in school more than boys. It used to be that boys were brought up, and that was a wrong thing, and boys were giving more of the advantages, but now girls are all over the country and all over Canada, and boys are slipping behind girls when it comes to education. So, when we talk about equality, we have to really understand that there really is no such thing as equality, because someone's going to be prejudiced somewhere, and so we're watching it happen. I want to give you this one. This is on economy, and I'm going to give you a couple pictures. I took these today off the internet, and I want to just show you something. So we talked about Venezuela and their economy, how bad it was, and social economies. This is the first picture I want to show you. That is 2 pounds of rice. It costs 2.5 million bolivars. That's how many bolivars or dollars it costs. It's on the side of it, there to the left. That's 38 cents, by the way. Here is, this is a package of diapers. Next to it are 8 million bolivars. That's $1.22. That's how much you have to bring to the store just to pay for that pack of diapers. Can you imagine? You're going to need a wheelbarrow to take your money to the store just to buy something. Then it goes on. This is flour, another 2.5 million bolivars, 38 cents. And these are people walking, and there's a lot of graffiti that's there. This says Maduro, misery. So their president is given the misery. There was a talk today about them dropping 3 O's off their money. So $1,000 becomes a dollar. And so they're dropping 3 O's off. They're going to pull all their money in and do that. It's not going to help them at all because they're bankrupt, and they won't accept the American dollar for any type of cover for their articles. And so people are fleeing it like crazy. This is socialism, and it's amazing to me that in America we're still talking about socialistic values. That's amazing to me. We don't even need to look at history. All we need to do is look at what's going on right around us. I mean, a little bit about war and what's happening there. If you're not used to snow, there it is for you. There is a growing animosity between Russia and the West, Europe, Britain, and the United States. Some experts note that China, Russia, India, Turkey, and Iran, and others are seeking to carve out a new space for themselves in the newly emerging international system, as the United States is struggling to redefine its place and identity in the new world. So this is a block of countries: China, Russia, India, Turkey, and Iran. They have economies that they've put together, and they're trying to do things that's going to be a pact, so that just like NATO would be a pact, and they're looking to do it very, very soon. Although the West continues to possess the power of influence, Western leaders have not been effective in using such power, and that's our past administrations. Instead of devising a strategy of selective engagement and recognition, they largely rely on containment and political confrontations with Russia. Regardless of the causes, Russia is being pushed away from the West and towards nations aligned against the West. So we're watching something formulate that doesn't look like it's too good. The Apostle John prophesied that at the end of the age, a 200 million man army of the north and east and the Holy Land would attack the end-time European beast in a devastating conflict that would kill a third of mankind. That's Revelation. So we know the kings of the east or China, they're going to come over. We know the invasions from the north is going to come, and they're going to actually attack the 10-nation confederacy in Europe. So they're already poised to do that because Europe is the revived Roman Empire, and so they're already at odds with Russia and China. So if they take an alliance together, then you're going to start seeing this thing start to kind of soup up. We know that the Battle of Armageddon is going to have them fighting each other, by the way, and so they're already doing that. They're already aligning to that. Where America falls, that's another story all by itself. Let me give you this other prophecy that comes along called the Horn of Africa. It's the end is a prophecy. After years of destabilizing relationships between their 2-year war from 1998 to 2000, the leaders of Ethiopia and Eritrea recently met and began what many are describing as a warm friendship. This new friendship brings the thaw in relations and the resumption of air flights between the two nations. It also opens up the potential for Ethiopia, a landlocked nation of 70 million people, to use Eritrea's strategic Red Sea ports. Resumption of relations between these two nations could greatly improve their economies and even stem the tide of refugees from Europe. The two nations have an ancient connection in a region that was once only known entirely as Ethiopia. Other nations, including the United States, Russia, China, Egypt, Turkey, and the Gulf nations, are also interested in Eritrea's strategic coastline for security and trade reasons. As Ethiopia and Eritrea begin to function together, they will have the potential to greatly impact the future of the entire Horn of Africa. Bible prophecy also sheds light on that region. Prophecies of a time shortly before the return of Christ when a European beast power will be in control of the Holy Land. At some point, provoked by the events in North Africa, perhaps related to trade and security, the beast of the king of the north will stretch out his hand against several nations in North Africa. But he will gain control of the hidden treasures of gold and silver and over all the precious things of Egypt, Libyans, and here it is, and the Ethiopians will follow at his heels. So when we start seeing Ethiopia in the news, and you go back way back to God's Word, and you understand that Ethiopia is mentioned there as rising in the last days, we haven't heard anything of Ethiopia for 2,000 years, and now it's starting to rise. So again, Bible prophecy is being fulfilled even as we speak tonight. Let me give you a little bit more because we're seeing some other nations come up and they're starting to do some threatening things. Russia and China are developing impressive new weapon systems as they prepare for war against the United States. I can't tell you how many articles I pulled up today that told me, and I didn't wait right until the morning of this day so I can be fresh with the articles. I've been looking at them all week. But there are so many articles talking about China and Russia preparing for war with the United States. I thought, why haven't we heard anything like this? Why haven't we heard about the naval exercises that are being done in the South Pacific right now, specifically training against the United States? Why haven't we heard that Russia is mobilizing and doing training exercises specifically prepared to go against the United States? And so there are some things going on that you're not getting in your local news. It says most wars are won well in advance, and Russia and China are both feverishly preparing to win the next major world war between global superpowers. Meanwhile, the U.S. military has been focusing on fighting terrorism and projecting U.S. power in a post-Cold War environment. Of course, the truth is that the new Cold War has now erupted, and Russia or China is not very likely, as a result of our strategic forces, have aged to the point of obsolescence. They're saying Russia and China are very much involved in this. In fact, it's discovered that nuclear forces were still using technology from the 1960s and 1970s, including rotary phones and an enormous 8-inch floppy disk. That's what we thought Russia and China were doing, but that's not true. Russia and China are just as advanced as we are. Russia has unveiled this new generation of pinpoint accurate supersonic strike bombers ready for test flights later this month. The Tu-22M3M is a deep modernization of the Tu-22M3, which Russia's Air Force has about 100 in service and used extensively in missions over Syria in support of the Assad regime. And so we know that they're called the carrier killers, as a matter of fact. Also, the Sarmat is a heavy ICBM intended to replace Russia's aging Soviet-era missiles. So their missiles that they had during the time when they were the USSR are now being replaced by a brand new generation of missiles, and they're more advanced than ours. So we're watching some of these things. By the way, the Sarmat weighs more than 200 tons, and it can fly 16,000 miles. 200 tons, 16,000 miles. A single missile is capable of destroying an area the size of Texas. And so they have some serious stuff that they have. The autonomous robotic submarines are expected to be deployed in early 2019. While not intended to entirely replace human-operated submarines, they will challenge the advantageous position established by the Western naval powers after the Second World War. The robotic subs are aimed particularly at the United States forces in strategic waters like the South China Sea, the Western Pacific Ocean, researchers said. So it goes on to talk about China and how many arms that China has and some of the new missiles that they have. So we're watching something really kind of flex its muscles around America and around America's strategic might. When we go to moral decay, we see this. Guess who's in the spotlight for moral decay? California. California, a controversial bill that stalled in California legislature earlier this year, has now passed the state Senate and could become law. The bill would effectively prevent those seeking help to resist homosexual tendencies from obtaining professional help. According to Liberty Counsel, the American Psychological Association claims that such counseling is probably ineffective and may cause harm. Probably ineffective, may cause harm. Contradicting such claims, Liberty Counsel recently published a study involving men who went through sexual orientation change efforts, and they claim demonstrate the overwhelming effectiveness of such efforts. So you know what's happening. You know they're saying there's men who want to come out of homosexuality. They go to a pastor, they go to a training session, and they're led biblically how to come out of that, and they are successful. Many of them come out. Well, they're saying now in California, if they go to a pastor, that pastor will be sued by the state. There'll be a lawsuit. They could face criminal charges. So they're actually getting involved with religion, whether you know it or not. The aim of the legislation, authored by homosexual activists, by the way, includes having an impact on those whose religious beliefs condemn homosexuality. During the debate of the bill, California Assemblyman Ali Machuri said, "The faith community, like anyone else, needs to evolve with the times." Opponents of the legislation see this bill as a direct attack on free speech and freedom of religion, expressing concern that it could lead to the banning of any book labeling homosexuality or transgender confusion immoral, including the Bible. Can you imagine the Bible being banned in America because it talks against homosexuality? And so that's exactly what we're looking at. Here's another one for social media. Social media companies ban conservative voices. So I'm not going to read you all of this, but the story was Project Veritas, which means truth, on Twitter. Undercover operatives filmed Twitter employees admitting bias against conservatives and revealing what conservatives have known for a long time. Twitter shadow bans conservatives. So you have people at Twitter who are taking down conservative voices. We are watching an attack on Christianity and conservatism all over America. And you know, it's sweeping in slowly. Actually, it's sweeping in quickly, but people aren't saying a thing about it. And so we're watching it happen, and believe me, it's going to get worse and worse. And when we go to religion, guess who's in the limelight again for religion? So the former Vatican official claims Pope Francis knew of abuse. Ex-cardinal calls for his resignation. Now, cardinals are pretty high up in the church. They're right under the Pope. The Pope, as a matter of fact, is determined from a cardinal. So to be a cardinal is a milestone in a priest's life. That's very rare to become a cardinal. It's like being on the pro football team. It's extremely rare. There's not many of them. Well, an ex-cardinal who used to work in the Vatican says now that Pope Francis knew about the abuses and did absolutely nothing, and he's calling for his resignation. So I told you, I'm not going to read it all to you, but I told you that the Catholic Church is in for a wake-up. It's in for a shock, and I believe it's in for a split, and you'll probably see something happen very, very close to that in the near future. He's denying it. All this cardinal has to do is come up with some information, which he says he has. He says that he has proof that the Pope knew it, and the Pope will be asked to resign. And so it's kind of interesting to me because the Pope is supposed to be the vicar of Christ. When the Pope sits on the papal throne, he is infallible. It means he can't make a mistake. And so when he sits there, he is the voice of Jesus, the voice of Christ. And that's why all of the 2 billion Catholics in the world ascribe to him. And so he's not supposed to be in error. And so for him to do something like this is going to be a shock to their theology. But you know what? People double down. When something like this happens, they don't think anything about it. They just double down and believe harder in the error that they believed. And that's what's going to happen. So if you want to talk about, remember the 10 Commandments going in the state capitol, on the lawn state capitol, Judge Roy Muir? Well, it's happened again in Arkansas, and the Arkansas legislature allowed it to happen. So the ACLU and Satanists got together and they erected this, a Baphomet in Little Rock, Arkansas. Listen to this. Yeah, this is what's happening in America. Satanists turned out in droves to shout their support of the unveiling of Baphomet, a bronze statue bearing a goat head perched over a winged body in the Arkansas capital city of Little Rock. The Satanic Temple arranged the rally right opposite the state capitol building, organized the event to protest against the newly installed 10 Commandments monument on public grounds. What we need to understand is that when America was started, and you go to Washington, D.C., the Ten Commandments are everywhere in Washington, D.C., so is Moses. You don't see any satanic symbols in Washington, D.C. We were founded as a godly nation. It's not one nation under Satan. It's not one nation under Muhammad. It's one nation under God. And that God is not Il-Aliyah, which is a moon god. That God is God the Father, the God of the Bible. We are a Judeo-Christian nation. And so basically we're watching the ACLU and everybody else come out and say, okay, we want our turn and we want ours to be done. So we're watching this happen. The seeds of the rally were sown in May when members of the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, filed a case to remove the monument, the Ten Commandments. The case was made on behalf of 4 women residents in Arkansas who wanted to do away with the Ten Commandments monument. According to the plaintiffs, the religious structures violates the religious liberty guaranteed as espoused by the First Amendment. In a statement to the media, Lucia Greaves, the co-founder and spokesperson, described the event as a kind of rally for people who regard the United States founding constitutional principles in the highest honor. How could you say that the constitutional principles are in the highest honor and support something in Satanism? The constitutional principles were all biblical and Christian. And so we're really watching something go really awry in America. We're watching it fly way off the handles from the Constitution that was written from the Founding Fathers. And so how it's going to play out? I'll tell you how it's going to play out. You're going to see the Baha'i faith there. You're going to see Mormonism put up something. You're going to see Jehovah's Witnesses put up something. You're going to see everybody. It's going to be like a placard for all kinds of different religions. And let me tell you something. The ones I really feel bad for are our children and our grandchildren who are going to get confused every time they walk past the State House. Our laws are based on the Ten Commandments. Our judicial system is based on the Ten Commandments. Our rules of order are based not just on some British man that wrote them, Roberts, but they're based on the Ten Commandments. And so to put something like this in it's a breach in our intelligence because it makes us think that they're the same as the Ten Commandments in the Bible. They are not. This is not an equal thing. And I'm sure people will write to me because everybody has an opinion now, and that's great, right? It's no big deal. Let me give a little bit about the planet, what's happening here. And we're not talking about a lot of this, but it's happening. This is official. Hurricane Maria led to as many deaths as 9/11. A report by Puerto Rico's government estimates the storm led to the deaths of nearly 3,000 people. It's one of the deadliest disasters in U.S. history. And so we're watching some really strange things. There's a large article talking about all the different hurricanes and the different stats. But it's suffice it to say this, that something is happening in unprecedented levels, not just with hurricanes and tornadoes, but also with earthquakes. This is also under the planet. That's the Ring of Fire, the full Ring of Fire. Now, I've shown it to you and told you about it coming up the southern coast, the western coast of South America, Chile, going up to Central America, Mexico, the Baja, western Pennsylvania, if you're following me, western Canada, off the Aleutian Islands in Alaska, and then you'll see it going down on all the way down to Australia and New Zealand. And that central part is the Ring of Fire. That is called the subduction zone. Wherever you see those lines all over the globe, that's the Earth going in underneath itself. It's a subduction zone. Most of them happen in the ocean, but that's where great fault lines come from. So it is heating up. Over the last 7 days, our planet has been violently shaken by 144 major earthquakes. Those are earthquakes over 6.5. That's never happened before. Within the past few days, we've seen an enormous magnitude 7.3 earthquake hit Venezuela. A giant magnitude 8.2 hit Fiji. So where will the next one strike? Well, they're starting to talk about California. California is way past due. Every time another one gives down this line on the Ring of Fire, it slips that zone some more and it makes it more northerly. So we've seen some southerly. So now that northern zone is starting to get the pressure. When it slips on the south, it gets the pressure on the north. So the next one is going to come in California. It's going to be a huge one. They're calling about something like 9.0. If a 9.0 earthquake comes and hits anywhere like San Francisco, it's estimated that 82% of the people will die. In San Francisco, that's a huge number. And so we're watching people claim it. Now basically the big one, tremors have raised concern of California's big one, a destructive earthquake of magnitude 8 or greater, this article says, and it's looming. Scientists have previously warned the Ring of Fire activity may trigger, I just told you this, a domino effect that sets off earthquakes and volcanic eruptions elsewhere in the region. So what it does is it piggybacks. Once you see the zone slip here, it's going to put more pressure up here. And so that's going to slip. So all the zones so far far slipped south of this right side of the Ring of Fire. And so we're watching it. We're watching something that's going to actually happen. And you have a lot of people who are looking at it and saying it's definitely going to come. So we watched California, and I feel bad for California, to be honest with you. We've watched these horrific wildfires, and now we're seeing something. We've seen mudslides. We're now seeing something that's a threat of a major earthquake. So this is another article that just came out, and it's down the line. It has nothing to do with the other one, but it has something to do with it as far as subject-wise. Watch out, California. 53 major earthquakes, including a magnitude 8.2, just hit the Ring of Fire in a 24-hour period. So I just told you about the 7-day period. This is 53 major earthquakes over 6.0. This one's 6.0, including an 8.2 in the last 24 hours. So it's something unusual starting to happen in the crust of our planet. The USGS defines any earthquake of at least magnitude 6.0 is significant. There were 53 earthquakes that met that criteria along the Ring of Fire on Sunday alone. If you would like to verify that information for yourself, you can do so. Not too long ago, he said, I wrote about earth changes, this article, all over the world, but even I was stunned by the ferocity of the seismic activity that we witnessed over this past weekend. Because none of the earthquakes happened in the United States, the mainstream media almost entirely ignored the story, and none of us have heard it on any type of coverage. That's a huge mistake, because basically, this is, I told you before, America is not an isolated country. You would think our news thought they were. You think according to our news outlets, it's like we are existing someplace in outer space by ourselves and nobody else exists. The Ring of Fire is happening all around us, and so it's definitely going to happen. And again, I wish it wouldn't, but basically we're watching something going on, and I would never be surprised. I would hate for it to happen, but I will not be surprised if it doesn't happen too soon. So I'm going to give you this. Usually our news is very, very serious. And I don't want to make light of anything, so please don't anybody think I'm making light. But somebody sent me this today, and I just felt I needed to say it to you. It kind of makes light of something, but you'll understand. So in Canada, their government, in its eternal wisdom, recently passed 2 laws, and they're horrible laws. They legalized gay marriage, and they legalized marijuana. Legalizing gay marriage and marijuana at the same time makes perfect Bible sense and biblical sense, this guy said, because Leviticus 20 verse 13 says, if a man lies with another man, they should be stoned. Apparently we just haven't interpreted it correctly before. That's in the news for tonight, and I'm going to ask the ushers if they come forward.